The second Trump-Kim summit ended with no deal. And that could be bad news for China. This is China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for the latest China news. And click the notification bell so you get an alert each time we publish a new amazing episode. So, it's the most anticipated blockbuster sequel of the year. No, I'm talking about the Trump-Kim Summit Part 2. Perfectly balanced. And like any good sequel, it's been left wide open for a Part 3. Because Trump left the summit early with no deal on North Korean denuclearization. Now, is that a bad thing? Did Mr. Art of the Deal fail? Well, it turns out there were much bigger things on the line. And President Trump quite likely had another target in mind as well.
China!
First, let's talk about what actually happened at the summit. Then we'll get into how China factors in. Why wasn't there a deal? Trump said it was because North Korea wanted all the sanctions lifted.
Basically, they wanted the sanctions lifted in their entirety, and we couldn't do that. They were willing to denuke a large portion of the areas that we wanted, but we couldn't give up all of the sanctions for that. So we continue to work, and we'll see, but we had to walk away from that particular suggestion. We had to walk away from that.
So basically, President Trump felt he couldn't get a good deal and walked away. That's important, and I'll get back to that point in a moment. But after Trump's remarks, North Korean officials said that they only asked for partial relief of the sanctions. Yes, partial relief of all the sanctions. Now, North Korean officials could be telling the truth, or they could just be trying to save face. You know, she didn't break up with me, I broke up with her. But you might be wondering, is Kim Jong-un even willing to denuclearize? According to Kim, yes.
Chairman Kim, are you ready to denuclearize?
김 위원장님, 비핵화 준비되셨습니까?
그런 의지가 없다면 여기 오지 않았을 겁니다.
If I'm not willing to do that, I won't be here right now.
That's a good answer. Wow, that might be the best answer you've ever heard.
아마 최고의 대답을 하신 것 같습니다.
Yeah, and how could you not trust a face like this? Trump, at least, says he does trust Kim.
And one of the things, importantly, that Chairman Kim promised me last night is regardless, he's not going to do testing of rockets and nuclear. Not going to do testing. So, you know, I trust him and I take him at his word. I hope that's true.
But even if Kim agrees to stop testing nuclear weapons, there are fundamental disagreements between the U.S. and North Korea on what denuclearization means. North Korea would prefer it to mean that they stop nuclear testing and destroy some nuclear facilities, but they get to keep all of their existing nuclear weapons. Sort of like a partial denuclearization. Now, since Kim Jong-un came to power in 2011, he conducted at least 4 nuclear tests and 86 missile tests overall. And those tests were setting the world on edge. But after Trump took office, he started a yelling match with Kim. And everyone was pretty sure this was going to cause a nuclear war. But it turned out to be a war of words. Ahead of Trump's first meeting with Kim last summer, North Korea blew up tunnels at a nuclear test site and destroyed missile testing facilities. After the summit, Kim stopped all missile and nuclear tests, honored the promise to return the remains of U.S. troops, and demolished frontline guard posts near South Korea. So what happened? What changed? It wasn't just Trump's tough talk. His administration put super serious economic sanctions on North Korea and made China enforce them too. These are the sanctions Kim now wants removed. But Trump said, nah, and walked away from this week's summit without a deal. And this is where China comes in. China is North Korea's biggest ally, and for a long time, China was the middleman. So if the U.S. or anyone else wanted some kind of dialogue with North Korea, they needed China. For example, the six-party talks from 2003 to 2013. It was a series of meetings aimed at getting North Korea to denuclearize. China insisted on hosting the talks in Beijing. But I can't say the Chinese Communist Party was the best middleman, since the six-party talks completely failed to stop North Korea from building nukes. But then Trump tried a different approach. He made the Chinese regime enforce stiff sanctions on North Korea. How? From early in Trump's campaign, he began threatening a trade war with China. This headline is from 2016. But he also indicated that he might be willing to not start a trade war if China helped the U.S. with North Korea. It's kind of like Trump was playing good cop, bad cop by himself. So he's both the good cop and the bad cop, which confused the heck out of Chinese officials. So Chinese leader Xi Jinping went out of his way to treat Trump real nice. He invited Trump to be the first American leader to dine in the Forbidden City. And he treated Trump to a Peking opera. Trump was probably very happy when that was over. But most importantly, Xi Jinping agreed to Trump's demand that China put harsh sanctions on North Korea.
In 2017, China's strict implementation of the sanctions has pushed North Korea back to the negotiation table.
And since Xi Jinping was so nice to Trump, surely Trump would abandon his plans for a trade war. Fast forward to the first Trump-Kim summit last June. Trump gets Kim to back down, solving the most immediate North Korean threat. And since now there's direct U.S.-North Korea dialogue, it also cuts China out from being the middleman. And then a few weeks later, Trump launches a trade war on China, which once again confused the heck out of Chinese officials. What happened to good cop? So Trump used threats of a trade war to get China to help bring North Korea to the table. And then, once Trump no longer needed China's help with that, he was free to launch the trade war that he'd been threatening. But that made Xi Jinping angry. He really wears his emotions on his sleeve. Anyway, Xi began meeting with Kim Jong Un himself. Kim has visited China 4 times since then. He had never visited China before. And when Kim traveled to the first U.S. summit in Singapore, he accepted Xi's hospitality by flying there on an Air China plane previously used by Chinese senior leaders. And for this U.S. summit, Kim took his personal armored train through China. There are 2 reasons for that. 1, according to a North Korean expert, it's because it makes Kim look slightly less dependent on China. But the other reason? The Chinese regime allowed it because it would take Kim on a ride near some of China's biggest cities to see the economic possibilities of sticking with China. You see, what Kim really wants is to make North Korea the new China. Yeah, he wants North Korea to go from an isolated hermit state that persecutes its own people and is shunned by the rest of the world to a prosperous modern state that persecutes its own people and is celebrated by the rest of the world. Just like China. Which could explain why Trump is also trying to tempt North Korea with economic development.
We're going to have a fantastic success with respect to Chairman Kim and North Korea. They're going to have an economic powerhouse. I've been writing about it. I've been talking about it. I think it's going to be an economic powerhouse. And it's something I very much look forward to helping with.
But here's where things get interesting. The sanctions have crippled North Korea. Kim clearly wants those removed. But Trump isn't going to give that to him unless Kim makes bigger concessions on denuclearization. So, according to the New York Times, Kim wants Beijing to urge the United Nations to ease sanctions against North Korea. But it's not very likely Beijing will help with that. Why? Because now the U.S. is in the middle of another tough trade negotiation with China. This time, instead of threatening a trade war, there's already a trade war. And just before the Kim summit, Trump extended the deadline to work out a deal, which actually leaves China not knowing what's going to happen, which yet again confuses the heck out of Chinese officials. As one analyst put it, I don't think China wants to cross Trump at this point. The price is too high considering the trade deal. So this means China won't fight the U.S. on North Korea's sanctions right now. The only option for the leaders of both countries is to make a deal with the U.S. And remember, Trump just walked away from the North Korea summit when he didn't like what he was offered. So China knows he'd be willing to walk away from a US-China trade deal too. Sometimes, bad cop gets things done. So, what do you think of the second Trump-Kim summit? Let me know in the comments below. And before you go, now is the time when I answer a question from a member of my loyal 50 Cent Army, fans who support the show on the crowdfunding website Patreon. David Schwimmer asks, was Putin bribed to undermine the West and democracy at China's behest? Good question, David. China and Russia sometimes do work together. They even hold joint military drills. And who could forget the time that Xi Jinping gave Vladimir Putin that fancy gold best friends forever necklace? They look so almost happy. But as far as I know, there's no evidence that Russia is undermining the West specifically at China's request. Don't get me wrong, Russia is undermining the West, like when they tried to interfere in the 2016 presidential elections. But Russia has its own reasons. It doesn't need to be told what to do by China. For instance, Russia is facing a slow economic and political decline. And what better way to make yourself feel better than by making sure everyone else suffers as well? That and being seen with your shirt off. Plus, as one Russian journalist told The Atlantic, the Kremlin was very upset about the Panama Papers, which cast light on Putin's wealth. And of course, the Chinese Communist Party, separately, is doing plenty of its own things to undermine the West. We've done like 500 episodes on that, so you can just binge watch China Uncensored to learn more. Thanks for your question, David. Do you have a question you'd like answered on the show? Then sign up to support China Uncensored on the crowdfunding website Patreon and contribute $1 or more per episode. We rely on your support to keep China Uncensored going. Thanks for watching this episode of China Uncensored. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.